This video will show you how to replace the intake side VVT solenoid on a Ford Transit-250. You'll have two of these, one under each one of your valve covers. Let's get into it. Along the passenger side of the engine compartment, we can see our washer fluid reservoir cap. We need to pay attention deep inside this area. We can also see our air filter housing and our air inlet tube. We want to separate the inlet tube from the housing. Use a 7mm or a flathead screwdriver to loosen the clamp just enough we can dislodge this. With that clamp loose, let's go ahead and separate this. Now that I have this broken free, let's move towards the center of the engine. So as we make our way over towards the center of the engine, we see that we have another 7mm headed clamp. We're going to pause on this one. Let's make our way along the rearward side of the intake. On the driver's side here, we have two lines that need to be disconnected. We'll start with the one closest to the front. Right where my thumb is, there's a small locking tab. I want to grab that tab. I'm going to carefully flex it to the unlocked position and we'll pull this out of place. So as far as this tab, I'm just grabbing onto it. I'm pulling it up, and then we want to pull it over so it's dislodged. You can see it moving now. Let's grab that line, pull it out of place. Just a quick inspection of that. We can set this aside. Let's move along to the next line. As for this connector, there's actually two squeezable tabs. There's one up along the top. There's a second one directly on the other side. So top and bottom. Squeeze the two together and then pull this out of place. You can use some pliers if necessary. Just be careful not to damage it. That line looks good as well. Now we can make our way back towards that clamp. We're using a 7mm for this clamp. So you have it loose, you should be able to take hold of it. Slide this away from our throttle body. Let's get this out of here. Now before we go too much further, let's just have a look along the top of the engine. Along the top of my engine, I can see that I have a lot of miscellaneous debris, and I want to make sure nothing falls in towards the engine during the removal process here. Now I'm just going to use some compressed air. We'll give this a quick cleaning. One thing I would note is we want to make sure nothing makes its way inside of the engine or inside of the upper air filter housing. Now we're looking along the front of the upper air intake plenum. We have our vent tube that leads up to this area. You can see the locking tab. Just like before, you just want to carefully dislodge that. We'll pull this out of place. Just use my thumb, we'll pull it down. Now we have a hose leading up here. We'll squeeze the clamp, pull this out of place. Use some pliers for this. You may have to give that a twist to pull it out of place. We'll set that aside. Just underneath where that hose was, we have a small metal bracket. You're going to find that you have two 8mm headed mounting bolts. For this, I'm going to remove the lower hardware. 8mm down here. There's our mounting bolt. Now, as for our upper mounting bolt, you do not need to fully remove this. Let's just make sure it's loose so this bracket can move. This is going to help during the installation process. Perfect. Now we're moving towards our throttle body. You're going to find that you have an electrical connector along the forward side. We do have a red locking tab. As for this red locking tab, we just want to carefully pry it out of place. This does not get fully removed, it just gets slid back rearward as far as possible. Once you've done that, looking closely, you can see that there's a secondary locking tab. That red locking tab was preventing this from being able to be pushed in. Now, while pressing this in, we should be able to pull this electrical connector out of place. A quick inspection for corrosion. Now, we do need to dislodge our wiring harness. This does have a mounting point down here. Just go ahead and pry that out of place. For this, I'm just using a trim tool. You can use pretty much anything as a prying device. There we are. Now that I have this broken free, I'm just going to bring it towards the passenger side of the engine, rest it down along the front. So we're making our way up towards the center area here. Now this is where we're going to disconnect another electrical connector, and then below it we will have an evap line. As for this electrical connector, it has a press-in tab. We want to press this down and pull it out of place. If you find you have a hard time squeezing this and pulling it out of place, you could carefully make your way along the other side, underneath the locking tab, gently pry it up. This one does feel like it's coming free. Pull it right out of there. No corrosion there, this is looking good. Let's make our way towards our next tube here. This is part of our evap emissions. Now, as far as this tube is concerned, there's going to be two tabs that are pretty much impossible to see until I have it dislodged. They're actually on the inboard side here. I'm taking hold of one, I'm pressing it down towards the center. The other one, I would do the same, essentially grabbing both, pulling them towards the center, and we should be able to lift this thing up. It's going to come up towards us. May be able to do this with one hand or two, it really just depends. So here we go. I'm just going to try to turn this so you can hopefully see. I'll press it back to the locked position. There's my two tabs. Squeezed them in, pressed it through, unlocked. Perfect. Let's leave this in the unlocked position and we'll continue on. So the electrical connector that we had disconnected, we also want to make sure we dislodge the wiring harness from the intake. I'm just using my prying device here. We'll pull this up and out of here. There we go. Pull that over. This is looking good. Now, as we make our way a little further rearward, we do want to make sure we deal with this bracket here. It has one mounting bolt holding it in place. We also have a small plastic bracket. Let's continue on with the mounting bolt holding this metal bracket in place prior to the plastic portion here just under it. So as we're looking back here at this bolt, it's a 10 millimeter. We can remove that. There's that bolt. Now we should be able to flex this. Let's get it out of our way. We're just going to rest it all the way over towards the driver's side. So just underneath that, as I mentioned, we do have a plastic clip. Now we do have two locking ears on this. You just want to try to squeeze the ears towards the outboard side, and you should be able to lift this tube up and out, just like I have here. Now this is looking good. We've completed pretty much everything along the forward and the side area here, but we need to make our way along the rearward side. You're going to find that we have a wiring harness with a couple mounting points. We still have a sensor up along the top passenger side rearward corner as well. So let's continue on. Now as for this electrical wiring harness back here, I just want to pry it up and out of place. Obviously I want to be careful not to cause any damage to anything. I'm just going to use my trim tool. You can also use a flat blade screwdriver. Now as you can tell, this plastic clip did break. This is common. I've seen this plenty of times. Once we do have this freed up, let's make our way across the top of the intake plenum next. Now, as far as this map sensor is concerned, we have our electrical connector. Just as before with the red locking tab on the connector, we have a white this time. Just go ahead and dislodge that, and then we'll squeeze on the tab, pull that out of place. We're just disconnecting the electrical connector. Now, if you find you can't squeeze the locking tab, I'm just going to use an angled pick along the back side, and I'm going to try to lift up on the locking tab from the opposite side here. So I've got my pick. Come underneath. No corrosion there. This looks good. Set that aside. So we're making our way along the back side of the intake here. We still have our wiring harness that we just dislodged from the map sensor. We have a mounting point here. Now, just as before, let's just go ahead and pull this up and out of place. I'm using my trim tool. I'm going to try to lift that up. There we are. Now, if this plastic clip did happen to break, that's okay. During the installation process, you can use a wire tie. Just a quick inspection of this, we're going to set it aside. We can continue on with the hardware, holding our intake manifold down. Now, as far as the hardware is concerned, we do have some along the driver's side area here, but you're going to find that you have a foam insulator. There's one thing that I want to note about this. Typically, I just take hold of it. I'm going to try to lift it up and try to pull it away from this area. Now, you may still find that you have other miscellaneous debris. Go ahead and clean that down. Once again, use some compressed air. Nothing can make its way inside of the engine. Now we can move along to removing all the hardware holding our upper intake plenum in place. You're going to find that there's 6 8mm headed mounting bolts making their way along the outer edge, and 1 8mm headed mounting bolt up along the top center. There's that one. Let's move along to the next. We'll continue on. The next one's just behind this area. It's fairly difficult to see, not hard to gain access to. That one's loose. Let's get the last one on the front corner here. That's loose as well. Top center. Now as for this top center bolt, you're going to find that it is considerably longer than all other bolts. Quick inspection of that will set it aside. Let's take hold of this. We're going to give it a wiggle and lift it up and out of position. Now you may find that this is stuck down in place. Just carefully wiggle it. Make sure you have removed all hardware. Slide that up and out of here. Just a quick inspection of this. Let's set it aside for now. Before we go any further, let's make sure we cover this area. We will have to clean it down and thoroughly inspect during the installation process. For now, let's just make sure nothing falls inside of any of these ports, which would lead into the engine and can be catastrophic. This looks good. Let's continue on. Now at this point, we can start looking along the top of our valve cover. Let's start by removing each one of our 3 ignition coils first. The process will be the same for each of these. You're going to find that you have a red locking tab on the electrical connector. Just go ahead and dislodge that. Squeeze in on the locking tab or gently pry on the opposite end. We'll pull this apart. Make sure there's no corrosion. Just a quick twist on that ignition coil. We'll set that aside. Now, as I mentioned, the process will be the same for the next 2. A quick note about this, we want to make sure we reinstall the ignition coils into the same orientation as where you had removed them from. There's that one. That one. Now along the front of the valve cover, we can see where we have our 2 VVT solenoid electrical connectors. As far as the VVT solenoids, the one closest towards the exhaust manifold, the outer aspect of the engine, is the exhaust VVT solenoid, and then we have the intake VVT solenoid towards the center of the engine. Either way, disconnect the electrical connectors. Each one of these will have a locking tab. I'm just going to use a small angled pick. We'll gently pry these things up enough that we can gain access. Now we should be able to squeeze on this and pull that out of place. Once again, if you cannot squeeze, just go ahead and make your way from the opposite side, pull on that locking tab, pull it up and out of place. Just a quick inspection. This looks good. Same process for this one. That one came right up. Easy peasy. Okay. Let's go ahead and pop this free here and we'll make our way along the front of the valve cover. Now, the electrical wiring harness is held down in several areas as we make our way rearward. Start up here. I'm just using a trim tool as a prying device. You can use a flat blade screwdriver if necessary, or even some pliers. Now, typically these will actually break. This is extremely common. Try to prevent it. If it does break, it's not the end of the world. Let's continue on to the next here. There we go. Now, as we continue rearward, I'm going to lift up. Yeah. Now typically there would be another spot right here that we would want to pry up and off of this stud. As you can tell on our particular vehicle, it is missing. Just go ahead and pry it up and out of position and we'll continue rearward. So now as we make our way along the rearward corner of the valve cover, we're going to find that we do have another mounting point for our wiring harness. I'm going to try to pry that up and out of place. Okay. Now as we move along the rearward side of the valve cover here, now this part's going to be fairly difficult to see. But there is another hold down point. We can try to pry this up and out of place as well. Now we do have a coolant hose that goes along this area, has a mounting point on the far corner. We're going to pull this up and out of place. There we go. Now we can start removing the hardware holding the valve cover in place. Most areas you're going to find that you have 10mm headed mounting bolts that have a stud hanging off the end of them. There are a couple bolts that do not. Let's make sure we take note of exactly where each one of these bolts would be. We have one along the forward area here, so I'm just going to make a clear marking. I like to use crayon for that. Now there is another one located right in here. Just a quick marking on that as well, just so we can remember. At this point, all other pieces of hardware should have a small stud along the top. Let's continue on by removing each piece of hardware so we can remove the valve cover. Put this one over here. Once you've loosened all pieces of hardware, we're going to carefully start prying up on the valve cover. We want to be extremely careful not to cause any damage. When we pry, of course, the valve cover will need to lift up and away from our VVT solenoids. Let's start lifting this up here. Now just a quick inspection of the valve cover and we'll set this aside. Now that we have the valve cover out of the way, it's common to find that you still have the gasket stuck in place. We're of course going to remove that, but if you look closely, you may find that you still have a little bit of dirt along the edges. We need to make sure nothing falls inside of the engine. I'm just going to use a vacuum. I'll try to remove as much debris as possible. Now we can remove our gasket from along the engine here. Just take hold of that. We'll carefully start pulling it up and out of place. We're paying attention for debris, trying to avoid anything making its way into the engine. Just a quick inspection of that gasket. We're going to set it aside for disposal. Now we're going to start looking at our spark plug tubes. It's common to find that one of your spark plug tube seals from the valve cover are stuck in place. Of course, you're going to want to remove that. Pop that off of there. Now, before we finish cleaning anything else on the engine here, let's make our way towards the removal of the VVT solenoid. At this point, we can remove our 8mm headed mounting bolt holding our intake VVT solenoid in place. Be careful not to drop anything inside of the engine. Be very careful not to drop this bolt. Just a quick inspection of that. Make sure it is not rotted. This looks good, so I'm setting it aside. Take hold of the VVT solenoid and pull that out of place. As far as the VVT solenoid, typically you can just take hold of it, we'll give it a slight wiggle, and pull it straight out and away. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, let's make sure we clean and inspect the mounting area. For this, we're just simply using a clean rag, no detergents, a quick wipe. I don't see any debris. Let's continue on with the installation of our brand new VVT solenoid. As far as this solenoid, we'll make sure that we bring this into position. We're lining it up and we're pressing it straight rearward, directly into this port. Once you have it slid in as far as possible, we'll continue on with our 8mm headed mounting bolt. Once you have that started in by hand, lightly bottom it out, and then we're going to torque that to 71 inch-pounds. And my torque wrench. Let's double check to make sure that's secured in place. Let's prepare to install the valve cover gasket on the valve cover itself. Now we want to pay attention where the gasket would sit. You can see that there's a groove making its way all the way around. I'm going to use a clean rag. We want to try to clean this out. Continuing on, it's time for our gasket. You want to make sure you have it in the proper orientation so everything aligns properly. It's fairly simple overall. Once you have it in the proper orientation, just align it with the groove going around the valve cover. Now, I'm not fully pressing it in yet. I will once I have it seated all the way around, so I'm sure I'm in the proper orientation. Okay, so this is looking good. Now at this point, just one quick inspection here, and I'm going to continue on all the way around. I'm going to press this deep into the channel. Let's get this over to the vehicle. Now, prior to installing the valve cover, the next thing that we need to do is make sure that we clean and inspect our mounting areas. Looking along the forward aspect of the engine, there's two areas that we need to pay close attention to. This is where the timing chain cover would connect onto the engine. Typically, you're going to find that you have sealant, which needs to be removed. When cleaning our surface, let's make sure that we're scraping out and away from the inside of the engine. Carefully start peeling this up, pull it away. Now once I have this clean, I want to have a close look in this area. There's something I want to show you. So looking extremely closely, this is where we can see the small gap in between the timing chain cover and the engine. It's important to make sure that you can clearly see this gap. It needs to be filled with brand new sealant prior to installation. But for now, let's continue on the cleaning process. Just gonna make my way all the way around the front of this. Now, as I make my way down towards the bottom area during this cleaning process, I had mentioned that there was 2 areas to focus on. Right down in this area is our second area that we're focusing on. Once again, you're typically going to find gasket maker. This is in between the timing chain cover and the engine, and it must be removed. Now, as we continue cleaning the rest of this, there really isn't too much we need to worry about, in exception of any raised areas with debris. We want to try to have a clean surface. Once I have this entire thing cleaned down with my flat razor blade, I'm going to wipe it down using a clean rag and some parts cleaner directly on the rag itself. Now, up along the top, I typically find this is the hardest area to clean, only because, as I mentioned, I need to scrape away, and this is kind of going against gravity. I'm just flicking it up towards the center of the engine, not inside of the engine. I have it scraped down. Let's continue on with our clean rag with some parts cleaner directly on it. Now, remember when we were cleaning this, I had mentioned that there was 2 areas that we need to pay special attention to. This is just as important with the cleaning process with our parts cleaner. We need to make sure there's no oily residue in either of these 2 areas, so that's the first place I will clean. Now, after that, we just want to wipe down the entire rest of the area that we did scrape down. Just a quick wipe all the way around. We're wiping away from the inside of the engine. Now, before we get our valve cover in place, let's have a quick look at those areas that we cleaned on the engine. During the cleaning process, I had mentioned that there's 2 areas that we need to pay special attention to. This is where the timing chain cover connects to our engine. Now, for this, I'm going to be using gasket maker. I want to make sure it is oil resistant. Just a quick little dab across each one of these 2 areas. You don't need very much. Now we can start getting our valve cover in place. We'll bring this over. We're being aware of our wiring harnesses. As we start lining this up, not only do you have to align each one of the mounting bolt ports, but we also need to make sure that our VCT solenoid or VVT solenoid ports are aligned as well, and each one of our 3 spark plug tubes. Make any adjustments as necessary. We'll carefully press this down. Now that I have this pressed down and onto the engine as far as possible, I'm going to start in each one of my mounting bolts. When we go to snug and torque these, it needs to be done in a specific sequence. As far as starting them in, go ahead and start pretty much anywhere. They're all started in. Let's go ahead and bottom them out. After that, we're going to be torquing these to 89 inch-pounds in the same sequence. Our 5th bolt is up here. Last one all the way up here. They're all bottomed out. Let's go ahead and torque each of these to that 89 inch-pounds in the same sequence. After you've torqued all 11 of those pieces of hardware, you can go around a second time if you feel it's necessary. This looks good. Let's continue on. Now it's time for our ignition coils. During the removal process, I told you to pay attention to where each one of them came from so we can reinstall them in the same positioning. I'm using some silicone paste. We can call it dielectric lubricant as well. I'm just going to bring this down into position, sliding it down onto my spark plug inside of the tube. Go ahead and start in your mounting bolt. Let's do the same for all. After that, we can snug up each one of these bolts. Now that I have those bottomed out, we're going to torque them to 62 inch-pounds and then an approximate 50 degrees. Okay, there's our 62. Just take it a little further here. We don't want to break the bolt off, just make sure it's nice and snug. It should not move around in any way. Repeat the process for all others. Let's pay attention to our wiring harness next. As far as this wiring harness, we do have our connectors for those ignition coils, but let's start by securing it along the backside. This small tab just slides over the rearward stud. Now we'll continue on making our way forward. I'm going to stop at each one of my ignition coils. We're pressing in on that connector, listening for a click, locking it down by pressing in on the red lock. Just double check it. Let's make our way down the line. Now we have our electrical wiring harness and connectors for our VVT solenoids here. We should have a mounting point that presses into the valve cover. During the removal process, ours did break. This is something that's common. You can replace that as necessary. Let's continue on with connecting in those VVT solenoids. Now if you look at the connectors themselves, you can see one is black and the other's white. Just go ahead and connect the black to black and the white to white. When you do press it in, listen for a click, lock it down with the purple lock. Repeat the process for the next. Let's have a quick look at our plastic intake. Prior to installing it, I have it on the bench. We need to look along the bottom side. We're just going to carefully turn this over. Now that I have this turned over, we can see our mating surface. This is going to go directly up against our engine. It's typically a good idea to replace this gasket, but at minimum, you want to make sure you clean it down, make sure it's soft and pliable. For this, I'm just using a clean rag. I don't like to use any type of detergents. We'll make sure there's no miscellaneous debris making its way inside of the plastic intake. Otherwise, that could get drawn into the engine, which could be bad. Now, as I feel around, as I mentioned, I'm making sure it's soft and pliable, but I do also want to make sure it is raised up and out of that actual plastic intake. The gasket needs to be seated, but it should actually protrude a little bit. That way there, when we do tighten this up against the engine, it's going to squeeze the gasket and seal properly. This looks good, so let's get it over to the vehicle. Before we bring our upper plastic intake into place, let's remove our protective cover here. Just using a pad, I don't want anything to make its way inside the engine. Now the next thing we need to do is wipe this down. As we do so, make sure you're removing everything, but pulling it out and away from inside of these ports. We do not want to try pressing anything inside. That's going to get drawn inside of the engine, which is bad. Just make your way all the way around this entire thing. A quick wipe, confirm there's no miscellaneous debris. Now we can get our plastic intake in place. Let's carefully bring this into position. We're going to start in each one of our mounting bolts by hand. Now that I have that rested in the proper position, I'm going to start in each one of my mounting bolts. When it's time to bottom these out and torque them, it needs to be done in a specific sequence. For now, let's just go ahead and start them in. They're all started in. Let's go ahead and bottom these out, as I mentioned, in a specific sequence. They're all bottomed out. Let's go ahead and torque these in that sequence to 89 inch-pounds the first time around. Fifth bolt all the way back here. Sixth bolt. Last bolt all the way in the front corner. We're going to go around a second time with an additional 45 degrees, which is essentially 1/8 of a turn. It's not very much. Last one up in the front here. Now along the front of that plastic intake, we have a bracket that goes from the intake down to the front of the engine. Down in this area, we have our 8mm headed mounting bolt. I'm just going to make sure I start that in and we'll bottom it out. Work our way up to the top. Double check to make sure that's properly secured in place. Let's make our way up to the breather tube. Let's get our breather hose in place. We're just bringing this over. As I start pressing it, I like to try to press on my small tab here. That's going to have this in the unlocked position. We'll continue pressing it all the way in. Listen for an audible click. Double check to make sure the locking tab's properly secured and this does not fall out of place. Now, as we make our way over, we do have another hose that goes here, but we're going to wait on this. Let's continue on towards our throttle body. As far as the throttle body, we need to reconnect our electrical connector and secure the wiring harness. For this, we're taking the connector, press it in. Audible click from that, a light tug, lock it down, red tab here. Double check. That feels good. Now we're looking up at our purge valve here. Let's start with our line. Now this line will have to be pressed into this area, so I'm bringing it up. We'll start pressing it towards the valve. Once you have it pressed all the way towards the valve, lock it down with your green lock. Audible click. It does not fall out of place. We'll follow that line to its mounting point. That should sit inside of this plastic bracket. So I'm squeezing the line and the bracket together. Slide it right down in there. We have an electrical connector. Now, as far as this electrical connector and wiring harness, it would actually go underneath this tube. So I'm just bringing it under. We have one mounting point that would slide into this area of the intake. You can tell ours is damaged. That's okay. We'll continue on with that electrical connector. Line it up, press it in. Audible click, and it's secure. Let's bring this tube over. We're going to align it with our plastic intake. Just slide it on there as far as possible. Make sure you clamp it down in the original positioning. For this, I'm just going to use some pliers. Squeeze on those ears. Double check to make sure it's secured. If it slides out of place, you may need to replace that clamp. If you don't have a clamp, you could use a wire tie. Now, as we follow the line, we can see where our bracket is. Now, this needs to be mounted down to our plastic intake. I've got my 10mm mounting bolt. I'll start it in, snug it up. Let's make our way all the way to the rear of the plastic intake here. We have our map sensor. We're going to connect our electrical connector. For this, I'm just lining it up. I'll press it on. Audible click from that. It is secured. Lock it down with the white lock. Now, if we follow this wiring harness, we can see that it does have one small mounting point. This has to slide into the plastic intake. Now, as we follow this electrical wiring harness, we have one mounting point. So I'm just going to press this down into our plastic intake. It's fairly difficult to see the port. Double check, make sure that's secured in place. Now let's get our air inlet tube in place. Slide this all the way down towards our air filter housing. Now we need to focus at that throttle body. When we install this inlet tube, it needs to slide all the way till it's bottomed out against the throttle body. You can see one locating tab here. If you were looking at the intake tube itself, you can see that has a small slot for that to fit into. Line it up, press it towards there as far as possible. Now while I hold that towards the throttle body, I'm going to tighten my 7mm headed clamp. Let's attempt to pull that off of the throttle body. It should not slide out of place. So we will have to make our way over towards the air filter housing, but since we're over here, let's continue on with the lines leading along the back side of the intake. For each of these, just line them up with their corresponding ports. You can't mix them up. One has a larger diameter than the other. Press it straight in. Listen for a click. Make sure it does not slide out of position. Go ahead and repeat the process for the other. Just swing this over. We want to be careful not to break anything. Now you can pull on this locking tab if necessary, but typically you should be able to just press this on. There we go. That's secured as well. At this point, after checking these, we need to make our way over towards the air filter housing on the passenger side of the vehicle. Over at the air filter housing, we're taking that inlet tube, we're going to slide it all the way up against this flat flange. Just double check to make sure it's seated properly all the way around. Let's snug it up. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing I would recommend to do would be to change your engine oil and filter. After that, you want to run the vehicle. Make sure you have no check engine light and no running condition, and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.